Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the special business meeting. We are on item 4, which is the annual general meeting. And I just wanted to acknowledge we've got Councillor Stoner joining remotely for this session. Thank you, Councillor Stoner. And but I will turn it over to staff to run us through the first part of this presentation, which is the 2025 Statements of Financial Information. I will turn it over to staff.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Rianne Sousa, and I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the District. I'm here today to present on the 2025 Statement of Financial Information, also known as the SOFI Report. The goal of the presentation today is to review the SOFI Report for Council approval. For Council and the public's background, to comply with the Financial Administration Act, the District must prepare a consolidated statement of financial information by June 30th of each year. It includes information contained within the audited financial statements, employee remuneration above $75,000, and the total amount of expenses paid to or on behalf of employees. A consolidated total of all remuneration paid to all employees, the total amount paid to each supplier of goods or services above $25,000, and a consolidated total of all other payments made to suppliers of goods and services. The Financial Administration Act also requires the SOFI is prepared on a consolidated basis. Therefore, it includes transactions for the District, Library, and Squamish Sustainability Corporation. In addition, Section 168 of the Community Charter requires municipalities to report annually council members' remuneration, benefits, expenses, and any contracts with the municipality. The staff recommendation is that Council approve the 2025 Statement of Financial Information as presented on June 16th, 2026. This concludes the presentation. I'll now turn it back to the Chair.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? We do have the staff recommendation before us if we're ready for that. If there's no questions from the presentation or the reports. Councillor Hamilton and then Anderson.
Yeah, thanks very much. The SOFI report is a valuable and important piece of our responsibilities as a local government. One of the things that I have found SOFI reports valuable for is seeing one recent adventure was looking at council remuneration through many municipalities. One of the ways I did that was through digitally reading SOFI reports. One of the challenges that I faced in a few municipalities, Squamish included, was that our SOFI reports can't actually be digitally read because they are, I assume, scanned, like a printed copy that gets scanned. This is not at the level of council motion, but if staff have any knowledge or ability to make it more machine readable, I think there's a lot of value in that, because I think there's value to us as a municipality for having our data out there in a machine readable way, because that's going to be an important piece of moving forward, and we'd rather have the correct information out there than incorrect information. So if staff could, great. If not, that's okay.
Thank you for the feedback. We'll take that back.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson and then Councillor Stoner.
When staff put on events like Public Works has last month, I learned so much. And I learned so much from this report too about district operations. For example, the schedule of payments to suppliers of goods and services. Nothing too eye-popping or issues here for me, but it does paint a very valuable picture for councillors, but also for the community. I am, however, curious as to why my remuneration is exactly $37 less than my 5 councillor colleagues. Thank you very much. I'm happy to pass a motion to receive this report.
In terms of the remuneration, it has to do with taxable benefits.
Okay, I've got Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that the remuneration line item is indeed like all remuneration. It may include like payouts for vacation time not used. Just curious how those figures might vary from, like, say, somebody's salary.
Through the chair, so remuneration is, like you said, someone's salary, taxable benefits, and yes, it would be any overtime paid out or vacation time paid out. It is the holistic picture of someone's remuneration. However, there is a differentiation between when you're looking at the counselor's remuneration and staff's. You'll see there's a benefits column for counselors, whereas for staff, that isn't reported on in that way.
Okay, that's helpful. And I guess I'm curious and a bit sensitive to the fact that in 2025 we experienced a pretty significant labor dispute. I'm just curious if that like shifted what we might expect in the Sophie report on the remuneration line items through this relative to other years.
Through the chair. Oh,
Through the chair, absolutely you can expect shifts in those numbers as a result of overtime incurred and last year we had two notable incidences. One was through the wildfire emergency and the other was through the labour dispute. So we will see variances year to year on the basis of events that occur.
Okay, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. Just in the schedule of payments to suppliers of goods and services, the Squamish Lillooet Regional District has got a line of about 5.1 million. I'm just wondering if you can clarify, is that debt payment? Is that the taxes we collect and then pass on to them, or what is that number?
through the chair, it's the debt servicing that we pay each year to the SLRD.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else on my speakers list, so it makes me feel we're ready for a motion. Are you moving the staff recommendation, Councillor French? Yep. Councillor Hamilton seconds. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Herford. This report every year is super important for our community. It is a transparency tool, a transparency document that allows our residents to get a peek behind the curtain, a totally legitimate peek behind the curtain that's set in law. So I appreciate all the work that goes into this every year and the transparency that this delivers for our community.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I'll second the thanks for preparing the report. And I'll also mention, having gone through many municipalities and searching for Sophie reports, I'm also particularly impressed at how easily our Sophie reports are found online and how we maintain a history of Sophie reports on our website. I think we should continue that practice. I know we're not legislatively required to go back more than 3 years, but I believe it's valuable for us to continue to do so. So thanks very much to staff for doing that.
Thank you. Other comments, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, thanks. Sort of mostly echo my colleagues, but just once again raise the concern of the cutoff of $75,000 for some of our staff who are in non-political positions, are just doing an honest day's work for their community, and the level, I guess the lack of privacy that you would have in any other job seems odd, given that like these are not political jobs or appointments. It's just, that makes me uncomfortable. I understand the transparency and I could understand listing positions and salaries, but putting people's names to it, especially at a $75,000 cutoff is I'm not sure it's I guess some feedback to the province is warranted.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that this meets the legislative requirements. Those legislative requirements can be challenging for reasons like you stated. Other comments? Just thank you, staff, for compiling these, and I find as I have friends maybe that move or considering moving to new communities, I look at official community plans and I go look for SOFI reports to try to get an understanding of what's happening in the community. Of course, each of these lines has nuance, which this isn't the place for nuance. It's really a conversation starter and transparency for the community. But I appreciate the work, and I do refer to them from time to time as to try to contextualize where we are as a community. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So our next piece is the District of Squamish annual report. I believe Ms. Glende is going to lead us through that.
Mayor Herford, we just need a moment to load the PowerPoint presentation if we could have.
That's totally fine. Let's take we'll call it a 3-minute recess, which will really be as long as you have. So we'll just recess the meeting briefly and get the presentation loaded up. Okay, welcome back. I'm actually calling the meeting back to order just to recess for a little longer. So we're going to take a 15-minute recess now, and we'll reconvene at 2:30. I guess that's a 14-minute recess for those sticklers. So we'll reconvene this meeting at 2:30. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are now on to item 4.2, which is the 2025 District of Squamish Annual Report. And we have our CAO, Ms. Glende, to run us through it. Over to you, Ms. Glende.
Thank you very much. Through the mayor. Good afternoon, council and community members that may be watching. I'm pleased to present the highlights of the district's 2025 annual report as part of the district's annual general meeting. The annual report demonstrates the district's progress in relation to the objectives established for 2025, guided by council through the district's 2023 to 2026 strategic plan. It also includes what we plan to accomplish in the next 2 years, the audited annual financial statements for 2025, which, as a reminder, council has already approved at a special meeting in May. Any declarations of disqualifications made under Section 111 of the Community Charter, of which there were none, and information and amounts of each permissive tax exemption provided, as well as lists of licenses, leases, grants, and development cost charges. The 4 strategic outcomes listed here have been identified as the highest priorities to achieve over the course of this council term. Resilient people and relationships prioritizes work to build inclusion and belonging with and within the community. Connected and livable community aims to improve community happiness and well-being and build connections and opportunities for everyone to thrive. Reliable service delivery outlines goals to deliver effective municipal services for residents and businesses today and into the future. Preparing for the future focuses on work to enable a prosperous future for a resilient community. Over the next few slides, I will share some highlights from 2025. It certainly doesn't include everything that was accomplished through the strategic plan and through the 2025. But under resilient people and relationships, the district signed a memorandum of understanding that builds on decades of cooperation and sets out shared path for land stewardship, reconciliation, and collaborative decision-making with the Squamish Nation. We completed the district's first age-friendly community plan to support older adults in the community, a community grants policy update to improve funding access and opportunities to community organizations, completed construction and handover of the new Menmen's Ta Smanit Valley Cliff Child Care Facility to the Sea to Sky Community Services Society, and applied an IDEA lens to the Community Climate Action Plan. Under Connected and Livable Community, renovations to Brennan Park Recreation Center progressed to achieve energy efficiency and indoor air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Construction of Hunaic Park Sea Dyke and park upgrades began, which will include a new waterfront walkway, gangway, and dock to provide public access to the water. In partnership with BC Housing, Squamish Community Housing, and Squamish Helping Hands, the district began public engagement and development permit review for a supportive and affordable housing project at 39900 Government Road. The district also increased transit route frequency, completed frequent transit network study in preparation for future transit expansion, and made progress with BC Transit on developing a new transit operations and maintenance facility. And finally, under this strategic priority, the district completed installation of the Squamish Story exhibit, the majority of phase 1 of the Squamish Adventure Center revitalization project. Under reliable service delivery, the district developed a new development cost charge bylaw and amenity cost charge bylaw, which were adopted in February 2026. So the majority of the work was completed in 2025. The new rates will ensure the cost of infrastructure projects required to support growth in the community is keeping up with recent cost increase of major infrastructure projects. And the new amenity cost charge bylaw will allow the district to collect funds for community amenities in a standardized way. We completed wastewater treatment plant upgrades to increase treatment capacity, provide system redundancy, increase seismic and flood resiliency, improve plant performance, and effluent quality. The district adopted its first 10-year financial plan, expanded online services to offer additional application and payment options. And in terms of developing our organization, completed leadership training to highlight and embrace strengths within the leadership team. And finally, under Prepared for the Future, the district completed an update of the Community Climate Action Plan with a greater focus on co-benefits of climate action and renewable energy, identified foreign direct investment opportunities relevant for and desired by local businesses funded by the CanExport Community Investment Grant. Staff updated the solid waste utility and demolition waste diversion bylaws for council adoption to support enforcement of waste diversion at construction sites. And as mentioned previously, began construction on the Hunaic Park Sea Dike. And in terms of Prepared for the Future, it also will meet provincial standards for protecting the community from coastal flood hazards. Additional flood hazard work, the district upgraded approximately 900 meters of the Squamish River Dike between Wewicum and Ukwux reserves to meet provincial requirements and increase the flood resiliency. The next two slides are intentionally crowded and serve to demonstrate the stated goals of what the district will work towards achieving in the remainder of 2026 and into 2027. A few key items will include completing phase 1 of the Brennan Park Revitalization Project, progress the supportive and affordable housing project that I mentioned earlier on Government Road, delivered temporary modular homes to provide urgent support for people living in encampments through the Provincial Heart and Hearth program, which is underway, and complete the downtown pedestrian bridge handover. A few more highlights is that the district will begin to update the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, work with Squamish Nation to co-create a framework for renewing the next official community plan, and implement the community agreements policy to evaluate potential agreements with community organizations for the provision of community-based services, operations, or capital projects. There were many memorable moments in 2025, some uplifting and some challenging. These ranged from the Dryden Creek wildfire response to opening a new childcare facility and signing the historic MOU with the Squamish Nation. Engagement activities with the Youth Council and our community at the annual budget event were plentiful, and the district also increased community resilience with the completion of the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. The district's capital plan in 2025 was comprehensive. This infographic highlights a number of the infrastructure upgrades that took place in 2025. Although this slide makes it difficult to read the detail, this is all included in the annual report that has been published online for the community. These capital upgrades are guided by an asset management plan and various master plans that look to the future for infrastructure maintenance and replacement to keep pace with the community's growth. The annual report includes the district's independently audited financial statements. As I mentioned, those were previously approved by council in May. It also includes lists of community enhancement grants, permissive tax exemptions, development cost charge expenditures, and licenses and leases entered into by the district. As always, receiving and incorporating public input is a year-round exercise as the district strives for transparency and works to offer genuine ways for the community to engage. There are many ways that the public can reach the district to provide feedback or input into decision-making, whether online or in person. We invite the community to learn about all the opportunities by following our social media channels, subscribing to e-news, or engaging with us on letstalksquamish.ca. We look forward to developing new and improved community connections throughout the coming months and years. Thank you very much. That concludes the presentation of the 2025 annual report. I look forward to any questions, comments, and discussions you may have. And I would also like to add that while I am doing the presenting, all of the work that was accomplished through the year is on behalf and done by staff and council behind me. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and for all the work throughout the year. It's always, I enjoy the opportunity to pause and reflect on the accomplishments as we spend a lot of time in this room sort of looking out the looking ahead at the and that inherently includes the things that aren't yet done. So thank you for that. Council, questions for Ms. Glenday or our staff? This is very familiar territory for us. If there are no questions, we could move. I would suggest we move receipt and make comments from there if that's where we are. So, Council, what's your please choose a path. Councillor Hamilton.
Just a very quick technical comment, and it's ironically in line with my comment on the Sophie report, that page 58 and 61, which contain the auditor's report, are difficult to read. I know that many of us have read those in different formats, but when it's present in the annual update, the annual report, those pages are difficult to read the digits on. So if they could be just technically repaired before the publication, that would be great. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just a few quick questions. One on page 51 of the annual report, 75 of our package. I should probably know this, but there's roads and then road special under the DCCs and then drainage and drainage special. And I just don't think I've seen them broken out in that way. I'm just wondering why there's a special category to two of those.
Thank you for the question through the chair. It's actually reclassified, or it's classified for the oceanfront front-ender agreement. That's the special category for the DCCs.
Thank you for clarifying. And then I had another question. This is something that I think we've chatted about in passing. It wasn't actually a specific council motion. When we did review the DCC ACC bylaw and the appended new community amenity contribution policy, I forget what we're calling it. We chatted about the importance of doing an annual report on the CAC component of what we've secured for our community through CACs, not just in dollar value, but also in contributed assets. I don't see that in this year's annual report. I'm just wondering if that's something that we can expect in a different report, or how we communicate the benefits that are coming through community amenity contributions over time.
Thank you, through the mayor, and appreciate the question and that being pointed out. It's not something that we normally include in the annual report, but staff will bring that back and find a way to ensure the community sees it. And I'll follow up with staff to make sure that that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Pettingill next to my list.
Yeah, thanks. Just checking on the section in the annual report, infrastructure improvements and upgrade investments. There's a number of dollar figures. My understanding is that may be a mix of grants, reserves, direct taxation. It's sort of a cumulative. When you put all this together, those are the numbers spent in the year. Is that accurate?
Thank you for the question. I didn't introduce myself for those folks who are online. Heather Boxford, CFO and General Manager of Financial IT and Procurement Services. That was longer than my answer. Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
It's the attention to detail. It's lovely. Council, I'm through my speakers list. If someone's already moving receipt, Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. And I noted that the statement of financial information is an important transparency document. Well, this is part 2 of important transparency documents. When this document is fresh on my mind, it's common for me to reply to people that are emailing us or having conversations out there in the world. And we're being accused of having secret Swiss bank accounts, and we're all being paid under the table to inform people that this document exists, and it's well worth the read to better understand exactly how we do things and some of the accountability tools that are in place to make sure that the best interests of the community is served at this table in this building by all the people that do the work that we do.
Thank you. Any comment, Council? Other comments, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this report, and it's I find myself anyways, I get so deep on individual topics. I guess can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. And it's really great to see this, take a step back and realize how much we actually did as an organization and as a community. It's, as my colleague said, it's an eye-opening read, well worth some a look and to understand all the things that we are accomplishing as a community. It's I think quite impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, again, thank you to staff for compiling and also, and of course, for achieving all the work throughout the year. I particularly like page 53 of the annual report, which is 77 of our agenda package, which is a great infographic around per $100 of taxation received, where that goes. And I think that can be expressed in many other ways, and it has been in different charts and spreadsheets and so on. But I find it's quite a useful piece to contextualize all the work that we're doing here, and yeah. So again, thank you for this, and I think that, as I said in some earlier comments, just being able to pause and reflect back on what we've accomplished on behalf of the community in our work together is really important as we contemplate the never-ending list of things ahead of us to as a community to tackle. So yeah, thank you. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So now we're on to the request for appointment of auditors. Do we have, this feels pretty straightforward and administrative. Would you like to? No. So this is here is the recommendation is that BDO be appointed auditors for District of Squamish. This is for the for 2026 fiscal year. So I will make that motion. Seconded by Councillor Hamilton. This is again, this is really administrative. The audit is an incredibly important piece of work here, and yeah, I look forward to another clean audit as we go forward. But I'll go to Councillor Pettingill for comment.
Yeah, happy to support this, and I just want to note that this has been an auditor for the last few years, and I've been impressed and pleased, I guess, that the audits are run by people who live locally, understand the regional district and the district, and sort of I appreciate the sort of expertise and local knowledge that we have seen from this auditor.
Great. Seeing no other hands for comment, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we're on to item 5.1, Municipal Finance Authority 2026 Fall Issuance Approval. And I will turn over to staff to run us through the presentation.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Rianne Sousa, and I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the District. The goal of the presentation today is for Council to approve borrowing security issuances for the Hoynayek Park Sea Dike upgrade, cemetery expansion, Oceanfront R20 Peninsula Main Arterial Road, and the technology transformation projects. For Council and the community's background, the Community Charter of BC states that a municipality cannot borrow under a loan authorization bylaw unless the financing is undertaken by the applicable regional district. In addition, a council resolution is required to initiate a request that the regional district proceed with the security issuing bylaw. We are now at the stage in the borrowing process that council passes a motion to initiate that the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District proceed with the security issuance through the Municipal Finance Authority of BC. The borrowing for each project has already been approved by council through the financial planning process and approved by the ministry and electors. The total approved borrowing for Winnaiak Park Sea Dike Upgrade Project is 13.1 million. Staff recommend that 10 million is issued at the MFA 2026 fall issuance for a term of 20 years. The MFA interest rate at the time of preparing the report for a 20-year term was 4.95%. The total approved borrowing for the cemetery expansion project is 1.7 million. Staff recommend that the 1.7 million is issued at the MFA 2026 fall issuance for a term of 20 years. The total approved borrowing for the Oceanfront R20 Main Arterial Road project is 4.5 million. 2.9 has previously been issued. Staff recommend that 833,000 is issued at the MFA 2026 fall issuance for a 20-year term. Lastly, the total approved borrowing for the technology transformation project is 4.6 million. 3.5 has previously been issued. Staff recommend that 1.1 million is issued at the MFA 2026 fall issuance for a term of 10 years. The MFA interest rate at the time of preparing the report for a 10-year term was 4.3%. In summary, staff are recommending 13.6 million of borrowing is issued at the MFA 2026 fall issuance. The annual debt servicing costs for issuing the recommended borrowing is 1.2 million. These costs have already been factored into the district's proposed or into the district's 2026 to 2035 financial plan bylaw. The recommended resolutions to issue the borrowing at the MFA 2026 fall issuance are detailed on this slide. This concludes the presentation. I'll now turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. I'll start with a question of my own, and then I'll open it up to council. In your presentation, you mentioned a couple different interest rates, and with what felt like the caveat of at the time of preparation of the report. When do we know? I guess it's like, when do we know for sure why the difference in the rates that we saw here were those pieces of the report prepared at different times and we're seeing some fluctuation? Or can you just sort of contextualize those numbers and run me through how that interest rate setting piece works?
Through the chair, the interest rate is set by the Municipal Finance Authority, and it will be locked in for a 10-year period, generally for a 10-year period at the time of issuance of the borrowing. So that would be in the fall of this year.
Okay, so these are sort of projected not best get. Would you like to? I'll hold my question. I'll go back to you if you have additional detail.
And just to answer the second part of your question in terms of the different rates. So 3 of the projects are proposing to issue for a 20-year term, which is the 4.95% interest rate, whereas the technology transformation project recommending to issue for 10 years, which is a 4.3% interest rate. And the reason is, for a technology project, the lifespan of the project or the technology is a shorter period of time, which is why we're recommending a shorter period of borrowing.
Okay, and thank you for that. And then these are still best projections and will be confirmed at time of issuance. Is that correct? Or have we heard that, or have we had confirmation of the rates already as we are contemplating this decision?
Through the chair, these are the estimates at the time of preparing the report, and then at the time the debt is issued by the Municipal Finance Authority, that's the time that they'll be locked in at whatever the rate is at that point in time.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any questions at this point? Go ahead, Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, I don't mean to open a can of worms, and hopefully it's just an easy reminder, but in terms of the arterial road, my understanding had been a lot of that infrastructure was part of a front ender and DCCs and so on. And so this financing, is this sort of more of a cash flow type thing, or can staff just remind me why we are taking out a loan for that?
Through the chair, the front ender agreement that the district entered into in 2015 was for a reimbursement of 8.2 million, or a maximum of 8.2 million. And it's funded by DCCs and borrowing. So the DCC percentage is 46% and the borrowing percentage is 54%. And the borrowing percentage represents the municipal share.
Thank you for opening and closing that can of worms in one motion. I don't have any other names on my speakers list, so I believe we're ready for motion, which I will make. We can move these all. Can we move these all at once as a package? Yes. Okay. Then I will move all 5 points in the package, and Councillor Hamilton is seconding that. Yeah, this, as was stated in the presentation, this is really administrative. This is following through on commitments that we've made through various decisions, largely through budget. And so I am happy to support these and see this move forward. I do think that borrowing in the context of local government is slightly different than in the more than slightly different than in the private sector. And I wanted to highlight that this is a way not only to make it the payments smaller, more easier to manage for the organization, but also ensures that the residents benefiting from the services that are being provided are contributing to them. So this is spreading that out, and that can be and that also accounts for new taxpayers coming online, as well as perhaps if folks leave the community and new folks arrive, they're contributing to these services over time. So I do think that borrowing is a important piece of our work here for that fairness factor of who's benefiting from the services that we're working hard to deliver to our community. So for those reasons, I'll be happy to support this. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Council, we find ourselves in an unfamiliar territory of being slightly ahead. And our next presentation does have a external, so I think we will recess again for. Might as well use the whole 15 minutes rather than try to have our guests rush to start sooner than that. So we'll recess till 3:15, and then we will hear from the Squamish Library annual presentation. So recess the meeting. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're now on to the Squamish Library annual presentation. I will turn it over to our guests, introduce themselves, and run us through the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Hilary Bloom, Director of Library Services, and joining me today is Anarika Van Hook of Studio Hub, along with several other supporters in the audience, including library board trustees and staff. In your agenda package, you were provided with several library items. We included our 2025 report to our community and the Provincial Library Grant Report, which we submit to the library's branch each year. And those were provided to you for information. Today, the service delivery plan and its accompanying memo are the focus of our presentation. I sat in front of council in February of 2020 and presented our future needs study, which painted a vision of the library's future based on that point in time for our community and the world. Many of you were present. Only a month later, COVID was upon us, upending and shifting many things, some of them temporarily and some of them in a more permanent, long-term way. Somehow, over 6 years have already passed since then, and our circumstances have changed significantly. This plan reflects an updated vision of the library's 25 years ahead, based on our community and region's current reality, future growth projections, learnings over the past 6 years, and best practices for modern libraries. Our hope is that Council will consider a recommendation to append this plan to the Real Estate and Facilities Master Plan. I will now turn it over to our consultant, Anarika, to lead you through the presentation.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us today. We have about a 20-minute presentation and then ample time for questions. So as part of the plan, we've done both internal and external engagement, and wanted to start a little bit with what we heard from the community. The library plays a really important role in the community here in Squamish. It must work well, first and foremost, as a library. The spaces need to be practical, flexible, and efficient. It must remain welcome and inclusive. It's one of the only places where one can go without paying, to have free access to Wi-Fi, and to stay as long as one wants. And also, one of the things that's really important for this plan is that we have to, or we must be addressing the growth that we see in the district in a realistic and responsible way. Design, sustainability, and ambition are all important, but not at the expense of function and cost. So this plan is really grounded in reality. And maybe some of the changes from 6 years ago, where the plan 6 years ago was really focused on the facilities. We really focused more on how can we holistically improve service delivery, looking 25 years ahead, aligning both services, spaces, and the growth that we see in the community, and supporting a clear and defensible decision-making that is fiscally responsible. A little bit about the context, and this should not really surprise anybody, but Squamish has seen a pretty rapid growth. And even since we were last at this table, we have seen an increase of several thousands of people without the library increasing in space or service delivery. Although there is the new kiosk at Brennan Park is about to be opened, so that's great. But what we see here is the previous census data of actual data of how Squamish has grown over the last 20 years. I myself have witnessed this. I've been living in Squamish since 2009. And those of you who have been there for that long can imagine what Squamish looked like about 20 years ago and what it looks like today. And it's a world of difference. And then if we look at the projections that we gained from the district itself, and we worked closely together with planning staff, we see that this growth is not stopping, and that over the next 25 years, we could be expected to grow to as much as close to 50,000 people. Even though that growth has leveled off a bit because development has slowed down a bit, it may take longer for the full build out to happen, but we see that construction is always cyclical. So at some point, the district will reach that number, whether it will be in 2050 or 2055 or 2060, but the growth is still there. We also have seen in the district difference in policy about allowing for more increase in density that has led to more people living here as well, and more diverse and evolving needs of the community.
The library today has a really strong foundation. It is a single downtown branch. It has a very high demand. This is a graph that shows that the demand and the use of the library, and this is just purely in-person visits, so this does not account for any digital services, but you can see that it has gone up as the population has gone up as well. Then we see a big dip and then a recovery. And I would say the recovery for the Squamish Public Library is really strong. I work with a lot of other library systems across the Lower Mainland, and this is probably one of the strongest and fastest rebounds we have seen in in-person visits for any library in the Lower Mainland. In addition to that, the library is a highly valued community space with the rentable space that is there and with the foyer gallery. So the key challenge is really that the system is really under pressure. The library has done a lot of good work. That work is outlined in the report in terms of interior renovations, having a neo return window, doing renovations to take out the big desk and giving space back to the community inside the library space. But despite of that, we can really see that the demand is outgrowing the available space. So this is a graph, only one of the many metrics that we use, which is the square footage of library space per person. The provincial average currently sits around 0.54. Current literature actually is recommending about 1 square foot per person, and Squamish is currently, or last year, at around 0.42. And if no library space gets added, then that number will decrease. But more importantly, and we have looked beyond just the space needs, we have looked at how do we get library services to the people. And what we've seen is Squamish has grown, and in addition to the growth that we've seen in downtown, there's been a lot of growth outside of downtown in other key growth areas. And so how do we make sure that those people have equitable access to library services? So really what we've seen is a shift in thinking. And this is more broadly and doesn't only pertain to the Squamish Library, but especially since COVID, as Hillary pointed out, I think COVID was really a time that was very pivotal for everybody, but it really showed how important libraries were. Libraries were one of the first public buildings that would open at a limited capacity simply because people needed access to public computers or a shelter. So the role of libraries in the community has really changed from a place to access materials to a platform for community life, learning, and well-being. The shift is already happening, and therefore this plan is not just about more space, but it's about, how do we define the role of the library in a growing Squamish? Libraries today are more than just a depository of books. They're civic living rooms, they're learning and digital navigation hubs, they're inclusive spaces, and they're really part of a community well-being infrastructure. And Squamish Public Library has already played this role in the community for over 2 decades. So when we started this renewal of the plan, we really asked ourselves 3 questions. The first was similar to the one we asked ourselves 6 years ago: how much and what kind of space is needed? But then in addition to that question, we also asked ourselves, how do we improve access across the community? And how do we strengthen the library's community role? So when we think about space, space is needed to enable service. Like we said, a lot of recent renovations have happened, increasing the use of the public space, but the current space is very, very well used and at times quite full. There are certain missing key spaces. The program room is booked all the time. It could really use another program room. And although the building is lovely and still has some life in it, and we'll get to it in the recommendations on that, it is one big open space. And so it's quite hard to create spaces where one can work quietly beyond the phone booths that have been placed there right now. There's really a need to expand both the space and also to adapt to maybe more modern needs of a library. The second theme is access. The library has relied on its single location. And that's, as the district is growing, that is no longer going to be enough. I mean, we're approaching 30,000 people here in Squamish. 30,000 people trying to access one physical location for their needs is quite challenging, and for that one building to meet the needs of all those people. But in addition to that, we have seen the district growing outside of that downtown core and outside of that radius that sort of is maybe easier to get to on foot or by bike. And we really have geographic barriers across the community, growth outside of downtown, and really a need for a more distributed service delivery. The third theme is community. So the role of the library as a social infrastructure. As we said before, there's a growing demand for shared public space, a strong role as a community and cultural hub, and an opportunity to deepen partnerships. So what does this mean in reality? Because those are nice words, but what does it really mean for what the library needs, or what the needs are for the library? It means a shift from a single building to a connected system of services and spaces. So this can include not only physical spaces, but also digital and hybrid services and outreach and partnership. So the proposed direction for this plan, rather than maybe proposing to build a big flagship new library, which we know is a big ask and maybe a bit unrealistic at this economic time, is to really look at a phased and scalable approach. We would like to recommend to expand and modernize core library space, but in addition to that, to introduce additional access points over time. Those could be staffed and unstaffed access points, and to build a more flexible and distributed system that will strengthen the library's role as a community infrastructure. So how do we do that? So the plan does not have traditional recommendations where we say, oh, you should do this in the first 5 years and this in the next 5 years, because again, we recognize that there are a lot of pressures on the municipal budget. So what we try to do is give a flexible framework that offers opportunities. So what you see on the lower left-hand corner is we have a kit of parts that consist of maybe a large library space, but also a small neighborhood library, a medium neighborhood library, and a touch point. And specifically the small and the medium neighborhood libraries could be actually renovations in existing buildings, such as an existing storefront that is already available, or an existing building that is becoming vacant. That will really bring the cost down. So what we're recommending is that in the next 0 to 5 years, in order to have more equitable distribution of library services across the district, that there could be some low-cost, flexible, and scalable interventions. That could be by placing, for example, kiosks or touch points in areas such as Britannia, and so to the south and to the north of downtown, so in areas such as Britannia and somewhere in Squamish North, either Brennan Park or a bit further north. And to extend the library's presence, if possible, through kiosks or possibly through a small neighborhood branch. This could really take up some of the pressure relieve some of the pressure on the existing downtown branch. Even if you want to return books, people now physically have to come to the downtown branch. So even if there would be 1 or 2 places where people could return books and have Holtz pickup lockers, that would already relieve a lot of traffic to the library. And it wouldn't necessarily relieve pressure on having programming space or spaces to study, but at least some of the traffic would be taken away from the downtown core. So the first priority for the near term would be to really improve equitable access and have some smaller, expand the library presence with touch points that could be staffed or non-staffed. And then in the medium term, really to look at increasing some of that overall capacity. Even though the square foot per capita would not be the main driver anymore of this plan, we still need some physical space to wear all those hats and fulfill all the roles that the library plays. So to provide some meaningful neighborhood-based library services in areas that are experiencing significant population growth. So again, we could think about Britannia, or we could think about the Squamish North, maybe the area after the barrier is finished, maybe the Garibaldi Highlands area or the mall. And again, if that would be a small or a small medium neighborhood branch, that could very well fit into a commercial storefront or the base of a new tower or a new multifamily residential building that could be built. Because we were talking about spaces anywhere from 1,500 to about 10,000 square feet. So in the first part, where you expand the reach by possibly having some kiosks or maybe a small branch. In the second, the medium term, to expand some of that physical capability, evolving from a primarily single branch model towards a multi-node network, and building some meaningful space that could enhance community programming and gathering spaces, thus taking more pressure off of the main branch. And then in the long-term priority, which is 15 to over 25 years ahead, that's really when we can then start thinking, once there are some other physical presence of like a small or medium library or one or two neighborhood branches, then one can really start thinking about redeveloping the downtown library. So we know that the downtown library sits on very valuable land. It's a one-story building. It's still in okay shape, but in 25 years, it will really be nearing the end of its life. And that's a good point to decide, well, what can be happening with it. And once there are some other physical touch points where people can access library services, that is a good starting point to then start to think about redeveloping the downtown branch. Depending on which other branches have been developed then in the 20 years ahead of that, then one can start talking about, well, what size should that downtown branch be? So we're not saying it should be the same size, or it should be larger, or it should be freestanding, but really in 15 or 20 years, one can start seeing, okay, has the population actually grown the way it has grown? What have we been able to develop up until that point? What is the space needs at that point? And if buildings are being redeveloped in downtown, perhaps a new community hub, perhaps a new city hall community hub, then the library could possibly be part of that conversation and take up, 15,000 or 20,000 square foot in a new development. And then once that is established, now instead of a single network, you really have a multi-node network, which is a much healthier way to grow, rather than relying on a single building that will, in 20 or 25 years, meet the end of its life. So why is this plan important now? The growth has been happening and continues to happen. The pressures will continue to increase. It takes a long time to get things built. So even if we talk about it today and start thinking about it today, some of these plans may not come to fruition for the next 25 or 30 years. We also know that the district has extremely limited funds and opportunities. And so we really wanted to present a fluid and flexible plan and show to council and the district that the library really can expand its reach by even having small touch points of 1,500 or 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. And even one or two of those opportunities over the next 5 to 10 years would really help keeping the pressure off of the main branch without maybe asking for a huge financial investment. It's also important to acknowledge the role of the library in the broader civic and cultural landscape. Specifically in Squamish, the library has always been wearing many, many hats. And it plays an important role in the community. If the library expansion projects do occur, and if they are meaningful in size, they could potentially help other initiatives in the district as well, such as maybe Squamish Arts, or the arts and cultural sector, all areas in which spaces are needed. We do see a lot of mutual benefits, operational alignment, and broader municipal support between arts and culture type spaces that the library could collaborate with. And I think that's sort of the summary of our plan, which goes into much more deeper questions, but we'll open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, questions about what we've contents of the report or what we've heard here in the presentation? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thank you. I guess one thing I'm sort of wondering is, I sort of see from the report, and I think we've heard it before, how libraries are stepping into new areas and providing a lot of value. And I know we've got a fantastic team that is being quite innovative and supporting the community in many new ways. And you do talk about, potential partnerships, and there's examples where there's libraries and rec centers and so on. In theory, though, rec services could move in new directions, or community services and so on. Are there particular things where a library is uniquely suited, or is it more just sort of as a community trying to figure out where things best go? Like, are there things that just intrinsically a library is best suited for?
Thanks for the question. I think my best answer to your question is a unique aspect of public libraries is that they are not defined by a particular set of parameters that lock them into really rigid requirements for where they are and where they exist and where they pop up. So in the report, having so many different examples of co-locations and partnerships and all of that just kind of speaks to the idea that I don't want to see libraries can go anywhere, but they are far less rigid in that sense compared to other types of amenities that have very, specific things that they need to have as requirements. And so I think the spirit of the report is mostly just to acknowledge that in a sense and be then having that in mind as decisions are being made as around development and expansion district wide, to be thinking, is this an opportunity for the library? So, but I think that is a unique aspect of a library, that they can come in so many different shapes and sizes. Does that answer your question?
Maybe.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. A few questions. The first one being, I really appreciate that our return of visitor rate seems to be quicker than most post-COVID, but I was also a little bit surprised to see that we weren't above the pre-COVID levels in terms of visitor rates, given our rate of growth and development. And so I'm just wondering if you have any reflections there on why maybe our in-person visitor rates are not back to pre-COVID levels at this time, given growth rates.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that, not just my thoughts, but related to what the data is showing. So that chart went up to 2024. So I would say certainly as we would map it out a little bit further, we would see a continued increase. But a couple of other considerations: we did not return to full open hours immediately after COVID. In fact, just as of this month, we've now expanded our open hours again. So we're essentially back to full pre-COVID levels. Also, that in-person visitation is indicative to an extent to, I think overall activity is much higher because we have people using the library in so many different ways now. So yes, people are still coming through the doors and attending programs, but COVID also really gave people the opportunity to discover different ways to use the library more than just coming through the front doors, which is what we were counting on that chart.
I assume that was part of it, as somebody who discovered a Kobo during the COVID era. My other question was on page 17 of the report, when it talks about looking ahead the next 10 to 20 years. There's a sentence in here that I was just kind of curious about better understanding, where it says Squamish will continue to grow. This will not simply mean more users, it will mean greater diversity of needs, increased geographic spread, and more uneven access to services, including increased challenges accessing downtown amenities. I just wanted to dig into that a little bit as to why we feel like that might be the case. We're also increasing access and the number and frequency of buses that are all currently going directly to the library. And so I actually think it might be the other way around, where we have more ways for people to get to the downtown core on a more frequent transit network. We have better ways for folks to walk around downtown or access on bike. So I was just wondering if you folks could explain a little bit on the rationale there for that line.
Thank you for the question. Absolutely, there are improvements and changes being made in that area. Um, in the current state, I would say, though, what we hear a lot from our community is challenges around accessing the library in terms of parking and whatnot. And I do think our modes and our ways of approaching moving through the community are changing. But I think that, coupled with the fact that as the community is expanding and densifying in other areas, there are other hubs in the community that people now can use as their sort of main day-to-day interaction. And that's something I'd say that has changed over time, whereas perhaps before, for some reason or another, most people needed to go downtown somewhat frequently. There's been a shift in the way that people move through the community. And I think also, just from an equity lens, putting the assumption on the community that they need to come downtown is arguably a little bit unrealistic, or we won't likely see the same usership than we could if we were making ourselves be where the people are. And that's sort of the whole point of this service delivery plan, is not just build it and they will come, but figure out how to get what people need to the people.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense, and thanks for diving into that. That leads well to my third question, which is kind of this distributed model, and appreciate the flexibility that comes with it. We haven't, I think the Brennan Park kiosk is up and running. I'm curious about kind of the operational constraints of that, especially, and I think I see SLRD Area D Director Rainbow in the background there. Britannia is pretty heavily called out in elements of this report, and I suspect that comes with more substantial operational considerations if we have folks going that far from our core library. So I'm just curious if we've started to think about it all around the operational implications of the proposal that's presented.
Thank you for that. In fact, we have. So, as part of expanding our services this year, even with the additional 7 hours a week, part of the budgeting for staffing was also an acknowledgement that we were going to be installing our Brennan Park Holtz pickup locker, which is in place as of yesterday. It's not quite operating, but it will be in the next few weeks. So part of the staffing calculation was factoring in servicing that locker 3 to 4 times a week. So we're doing a very kind of mini version of it right now. And when I return to council in the fall, you'll hear me talk to you about our 2027 request for the purchase of an e-cargo van, so that we can start having a vehicle to service not just the Holtz pickup locker, but potentially future pickup lockers and other outreach. And just the idea of really building the foundation for having this service model that can be distributed. So we have, we're conservatively sort of staffing the service to the level of staffing budget that we have. And then this report did have the support financially, a portion of it from the SLRD for us to contemplate service of Area D, because the library service region does include Area D of the SLRD. So in conversations with Director Rainbow, we've been talking about, next steps there. We didn't get into it in this report specifically, but I will also acknowledge that something like a Holtz pickup locker, even if it's located in Britannia, for people who live in Squamish, south of downtown, that can also be a very convenient place if they are commuting and whatnot. I think I'll leave it there, but I think that's sort of the scope of what you're asking.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much for the report. I always love hearing about plans for the library and how we can expand. I think the notion of the distributed model of the library is a wise choice at this moment. Distributed systems tend to be more resilient, and particularly as we look into that long-term future of the possibility of replacing the downtown library, if it is the only one then it's a very tricky, challenging proposition to do. So in that idea, I like the idea of the kiosks, and I recognize there will be operational requirements to service kiosks as they go, maybe Britannia, Brennan Park, and perhaps further north. I can imagine, I'm thinking probably because I drop my kid off and pick him up from Don Ross every now and again, particularly with all the work that's going on up there. There may be opportunities close to Don Ross Middle School for a kiosk in the development upcoming. As we go beyond that kiosk idea and towards the idea you've presented of small library nodes, do you have a thought of how to integrate that requirement into the districts, into our planning processes? So the most effective way I can imagine that happening is a development's coming to the table, planning staff has an idea of all the requirements from all of our community groups, and they may identify, oh, a library will fit well here. Do you have an idea of how you can integrate into those planning processes of the district to make those nodes happen?
Thank you for the question. Well, actually, the next slide speaks to it a little bit in the sense that in the memo, the recommendation from the library is that this plan be appended to the real estate and facilities master plan of the district, so that it is then considered one of the filters or lenses that is being placed upon decision making as real estate and future facilities are considered. I'm open and happy to learn about other sort of mechanisms that could be put in place. But in the process of starting this work, the best way that I kept thinking about it was that we needed there to be that lens placed on all future growth in the community that considered the library in the same way that there's sort of a tipping point by which after a certain distance away from a fire hall, you build another fire hall or whatever else. We don't have that for libraries in the same way, but wanting it to have that have that in mind as part of planning and decisions are being made.
Thanks.
I have a question. I'll come to you, Councillor Pettingill. Just to pick up on that, in the report, there's the looking forward piece, which talks about the ways where library really should be considered. And before that also talks about future opportunities for collaboration and highlights things like affordable and accessible cultural space, exhibition programming space, archival heritage facilities, and flexible civic gathering environments, all these things that libraries can be. As it relates to those pieces, how do you see this fit? I get the dispersed model, and I think we've covered that quite well in the presentation, in the report presentation conversation. But that other piece of those services that are sort of adjacent to and maybe aspirational, how are you thinking about those pieces of the work at this point in time?
Thank you for the question. That was definitely a part of our discussion and sort of rumination as we figured out how to present this. And I think what it comes back to is my job and my core mandate is library services. So of course, that is the focus of this plan, is that, you know, how are we going to handle that? But we are adjacent, and we do wear other hats to some extent, or work closely with other organizations that are in the arts, cultural, and heritage sector who have challenges. So again, this isn't intended to be a prescriptive model. It's more of a like planning conversation, thinking ahead. But I would say that when we're contemplating additional buildings, size-wise, with more is possible. So the mapping out of sort of phases of growth of the library are looking at kind of like minimum nice to haves, but if opportunities were to come along for a larger facility in some of these areas, then I think we could potentially help tick other boxes of need in the community. But the mandate or the task of this plan wasn't to try to solve all the problems for all the for all the groups, but we're certainly aware and wanted to make a point of saying that there are synergies. And I will say also, and I think this was very clearly laid out by Anarika, but we're talking about a longer term look for downtown. And that isn't to say that we wouldn't be open to something sooner for downtown, but just trying to really ground truth everything in the sort of realistic circumstances. And to the point also that by alleviating pressure off of downtown, I think the long-term ability of the downtown branch to continue doing its job will be huge. And then we can think about new solutions for downtown because there are other places already doing library services too.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation as it appears in our agenda is to receive. We've got this additional ask to do something specific with this report. So I'm going to ask our district staff where's the best place for this? The report itself talks about, cultural, refers to cultural facilities planning, heritage conversation initiatives, recreation and civic facility planning, broader municipal growth strategies, which is sort of a good catch-all. I know that on page 57 of our agenda, we talk about sort of civic hub space planning, so we don't lose this. I'm hesitant to attach it to any specific place, given that it kind of lives in many places. So I'd look for staff for some guidance as to where best to refer this so that it can be captured in one of these spaces. And I'll come to, yeah. Just, a broad refer to staff for future consideration is something that we can do, but
Thank you for the question. My name is Harmony Cornwell, Director of Facilities and Sustainability. Through the Mayor, I do believe that the real estate facilities master plan is the right place. We don't only look at it through the lens of infrastructure. We try to bring in all the interested and affected parties to inform the programming of any building. And the REFMP master plan is up for renewal in 2028.
so so then to that end, would you suggest that we refer this to that renewal for inclusion in that renewal consideration in that renewal process? Or is there another action that you're recommending?
Thank you for the question through the Mayor. I think that we append it to the existing master plan that we're utilizing today, and that's where the first library service delivery program was, and that when we do the update, that the service delivery plan that we're hearing today gets carried forward to the update.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, did you have a question on this point? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it may be tangentially read. Anyways, the library is currently in our ACC bylaw as a single building. Do we have to make changes to our ACC bylaw, or would there be, do we have to change the way we think about it if we're looking at having small nodes potentially donated by developments rather than larger pieces? One large piece, sorry.
Thank you for the question through the chair. I will admit I am not the best person to answer this question, but being a member of our capital committee, I will say that we are looking widely at all projects that can qualify for ACC or DCCs to make sure that we are not missing opportunities.
And just to offer my 2 bits on that question, I think this is one of those cases where if we were to take the action of attaching this to the real estate facilities master plan, a subsequent flow through may be updating the things that would advance the things that are included in the real estate facilities master plan. And I see nods from staff in the room, so I'll take that. I'll go to Councillor Pettingill. I think I had you did I have you on the list? Over to you.
Yeah, but just a quick thought. I wonder if a referral to next strategic plan also makes sense. But setting that aside, I'm wondering, as I look through the the maps in the 10 to 15 and 15 to 25 year, and sort of recognizing there has been a lot of partnership between regional district area D and so on in the library. And I have a tickle in the back of my mind that there's a reason why it's a municipal library and not a regional district library. But I do wonder, has the board had discussions about, if this became a regional district library, what would that look like? Would it matter? And, just as I look at some of the maps, I wonder if the sort of next physical location might be in Brackendale or something, so there's closer access to Squamish Valley and some of those things, and if some of those things might shift, and if that's a worthwhile consideration, or are you having discussions about that, or is the reason why we wouldn't contemplate that?
Thank you. Are you asking if we're contemplating switching to a different model, or I don't think I understand the question.
I guess I'm asking, are there any discussions, or is there a reason to discuss that? Like, as I start to think about some of these discussions and I think about, some of the partnerships that exist, is there a rationale for expanding it out?
So as far as considering switching to a regional model, I know at one point we did look into it, but then that's contemplating the entire regional district. And so it's a very different model and a different system of governance. And so it's not something that we're contemplating at this time, but we do work very closely with our area D rep in order to and he's worked hard to be kind of garnering additional support from the regional district for the library to serve Area D.
Okay. Councillor Anderson, go ahead. And then I'm hoping that we can get to motions following questions from Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Herford, I'd be happy to offer a motion at this time if there are no further questions.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I will move that the 2026 Library Service Delivery Plan be received and appended to the 2018 Real Estate and Facilities Master Plan. If there's a seconder, I'll speak to that.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hamilton seconds. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Under the section strengthening the library's role as social infrastructure, I'll just highlight a couple of statements here. Align future investments with broader community needs for civic and cultural space. Well, this is going to require attention to the broader picture of community needs, as we've heard. The Real Estate and Facilities Master Plan will need to capture that broader picture of community needs for our facilities planning purposes, for purposes of alignment and coordination. In the section, the library within the broader civic and cultural landscapes, to quote a couple of sentences, alignment with broader district cultural and heritage planning initiatives. And this service plan therefore recognizes the importance of ongoing coordination. Ms. Bloom has referred to the term lens. That's how she has described or conceived of the Real Estate and Facilities Master Plan, the role it plays. In the same section, the library within the broader civic and cultural landscape, there's also some cautionary statements in the report and some statement of limitations as to what the library can by itself address. In the Real Estate and Facilities Master Plan, there's reference to other reports, namely the Arts, Cultural and Heritage Strategy. Really, that is still a plan to make a plan. It's a commitment to do more planning. And so we got more work to do, and this additional work in needs assessment and target setting will be of immense help for the library's planning efforts and for the library's considering collaboration and partnership scenarios also. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing us this update and a really thoughtful, I won't call it, it's not quite a change in direction, but a thoughtful expansion of thinking of how to expand. The notion of expanding into a more distributed network of libraries, I think there's a lot of value there, particularly from the municipal perspective, when one big piece is often difficult to muster. Whereas a bunch of small pieces is sometimes easier to muster and can sometimes be more effective for our community to access. It's important to recognize that there are operational reasons why one big library it's operationally easier to have all your staff in one place and all your books in one place. So there will be operational costs that come with a distributed system. But I think there's also very large capital costs that come with one large system. So I think this is a really good way to look at it. And I sincerely hope that we can start with at least these kiosks, pilot them, and hopefully successfully run one down in Britannia and in Brennan Park, so that these kiosks can be a initial test bed for more node-based library services. Thanks.
Thank you. Could I just have the mover could you repeat your motion, or if you could email to our minute taker just to make sure we have it? I think I have it, but if you could repeat, it would be great.
Certainly. That the 2026 Library Service Delivery Plan be received and appended to the 2018 Real Estate and Facilities Master Plan.
Thank you. I have Councillor Stoner, then Greenlaw.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, another word of thanks for the service delivery plan, the creativity that has been presented. It was a joy to read, both in terms of the creativity behind how our library is currently operated and the vision for how we might be able to do more in a distributed model, recognizing the challenges that we have with trying to envision a brand new library downtown, and really thinking hard about how that might not be the best use of time and effort and money in this particular moment, as we try and address some of the equity access components of the variety of services that our library is currently delivering to our community. There's a line in there that says that we have, what does it say? Largely exhausted its ability to accommodate growth within its existing footprint. And I think that's an understatement. I think we've redesigned the library many times over in trying to find new ways to carve out new spaces for different forms of programming. But I will also say I reposted recently the expanded hours of our library that are just starting. And I had many folks from around the province respond and ask me, how are we doing it? Because I know libraries across the board are facing reduced hours, reduced support, largely because the province's funding for libraries has been at a standstill for so long. I think it continues to be a commitment of this council and in our community to show up and ensure that these services are provided. And I think part of that is the creativity with which Hillary, your team, and you are finding novel ways of delivering these services. So I really appreciate the pilot project that's going in at Brennan Park. I look forward to seeing the operational considerations that brings as we look to expand in new ways. And similar to Councillor Hamilton, we know that there'll be a cost to that, but it will be far less than building a brand new capital library at this point in time. And I think a more reasonable way for us to move forward in the next 5 years at the very least, as we try and envision what 10 years plus might look like. So thanks for the work, and I look forward to having this part of our real estate and facilities master plan immediately, and then informing the 2028 update. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, thanks. Just want to say this opportunity. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for the work you've been doing. And I'm a huge fan of the library. It's incredible the resources that you bring to our community, and it's just such an important space. I spend a fair amount of time there. But the other piece is I really like this idea. I got really excited when you started talking about this kind of dispersed model. I think that is a really intelligent way to go forward, like to wrap your head around the cost associated with building a new library. It just seems unattainable in any reasonable future. So I'm very excited to see that come down. I really like considering smaller spaces for this, and I think it would be a great asset for the community. So thank you. Really good work.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks for this. I'm not going to propose an amendment to also ask that this be brought forward to the strategic plan, but I would encourage the library board and so on, as the next council is elected, to remind that incoming council of paying attention to this part of the real estate facilities master plan. I think we have and of course I'm biased, but a uniquely innovative and ambitious group of folks at our library. And it's really incredible what happens. I'm really pleased to hear that the operating hours are expanding. It has been a frustration of mine at sometimes that we have this fantastic space and fantastic team, and it's closed sometimes. I understand, why that has to happen. I do have a bit of well, I see in some ways the wisdom of the dispersed model. While there's so much division in the world, the having this place, this gathering place that is so uniquely inclusive and brings so many people in our community together and provides a basis of shared understanding, I think the importance of that can't be underestimated. So I think as we look at a dispersed model, paying attention to the value and how the library brings people together is really important. And so maybe a tough balance to find, but so far we're doing a fantastic job, and I'm sure we will continue to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm happy to support the motion. Thank you so much for all of your work in delivering services to the community. Others have spoken to the feedback they've had from community around how much they appreciate what you do, and I think that in my time at the library board, which is going back many years ago now, we were contemplating at that time how to get the most out of the building and how best to serve the community. And there's different iterations of bookmobiles and all these ideas, and it's great to see them starting to sort of coalesce and to and I think that what we have here, what's been presented to us, is really a fair reflection of where we are as a community, and also acknowledges the complexities of where we are and the limitations. I think there's a tendency sometimes for blue sky thinking, which is great. However, I think this reflects the realities of where we are. And I see it as sort of a yes and to Councillor Pettingill's point. I do think that central place is really important, and for it to continue to function in the way, sort of that broader capacity of bringing folks together and so on, dropping some of the load off that for those pieces where, that are more that are able to be delivered in these satellite locations, I think makes good sense. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves as you've got some learning of operating kiosks and what it really takes, and to see if this approach sort of holds over time, or if it needs to, as the learnings come in, needs to be adjusted. But I also have I have great confidence that the library staff and board have demonstrated that flexibility and sort of reasonable decision making to get us to this point. So I'll be observing those future conversations as we go, but I'm happy to support this at this point. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, so Council, the next piece is the Squamish Sustainability Corporation annual general meeting. So there's a recommendation. There's recommendations here for council, and then I have a script to go through. And for those that have been through this before, this is a process where essentially we request that council appoint me, the mayor, to be appointed to vote on behalf of the shareholder during the annual general meeting of the Squamish Sustainability Corp, which is happening today. And then you direct how those votes will go. And then I go into a meeting with myself, which is, yes, as odd as it sounds, but that's the process. And I run through executing those recommendations. We don't have we don't have a presentation on this. It's as it appears in the agenda, although we do have staff here to answer some questions if there's questions about this process that triggers questions from time to time because it is a bit odd. And one of the recommendations here as well is that Councillor French and Councillor Hamilton be reappointed to the as well as other members of the board for the remainder of the for the remainder of the term, and which to me reinforces a council decision that we made maybe last year when we did the shuffling of appointments. It just gets papered here. So with that, I'd be looking for my council colleagues to make the motions. Councillor French.
Yeah, I'll move that Mayor Herford be appointed to vote on behalf of the shareholder during the June 16, 2026 annual general meeting of the Squamish Sustainability Corp.
And I believe that we need all 4 motions there. Is that correct, Ms. Van Budo?
In the past, council has done them individually based off of the content of the motions proposed here. I believe council could do the first 3 and then do number 4 as a standalone.
Oh. So can you move the first 3?
Yes, please.
Second by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. So now we need the motion to suspend the special business meeting temporarily in order to sit as the shareholder. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now to my script. Bear with me here. So now, as it says, the mayor now meets with himself and votes as follows. Voting on behalf of the Squamish Sustainability Corporation, I resolve that the financial statements of the Squamish Sustainability Corporation for 2025 be accepted by the shareholder, that Councillor French, Councillor Hamilton, Julie Vengi, Patricia Ng, Kirby Brown, and Jeremy Roche be appointed to the board of the Squamish Sustainability Corporation. And number 7 is that the Squamish Sustainability annual general meeting will now terminate. So, and now we go back to the special business meeting. I think that was me doing it all. Do you have a question, Councillor Hamilton?
No, if we're back in the special meeting,
we are back in the special meeting.
Propose a motion.
And we are looking for a motion. Yes,
to terminate.
Oh, that's a great idea. Councillor French seconds, and we're all in favor of that. Thank you very much. I'll call the question for it to be official. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Don't go too far. We'll be back at 6 o'clock for our regular meeting. Thank you.